Next presenters, we have two guest presenters, two good friends of Mike Kennedy, Mr. Donnie McCauley and Mr. Jimmy Burke. We forgot Jimmy in the program. Nothing personal, not because you're from St. Agnes or anything, Jimmy. But welcome to Donnie and Jimmy.
Thank you. It's certainly an honor to be here to honor Mike. And obviously he was such a special individual who contributed so much and accomplished so much for the youth in the Waterford that the committee felt it was necessary to have two people come up here and talk about him. And so much has been written and said about Mike during the 13 months since his untimely passing. And hopefully we can do justice to his memory and legacy during the next little while. Much of what we touch upon has already been well documented over the past year, but we've, at least I have found out a few things that might be new to some of you guys. So as most everybody knows, Mike went to St. Agnes School, started at St. Agnes and was part of that institution for many, many years. Jimmy first met Mike in the elementary school level, and he's probably known Mike, other than Mike's family members, he's probably known Mike longer than anybody else. So I'll turn it over to him for now.
Thanks, Mike. Is this low enough for me? Can you hear me? Good. Mike was a huge fan of Waterford and District Sports Hall of Fame for the obvious reasons that it gave the community the opportunity to celebrate the wonderful coaches and athletes and builders and officials. Anybody else? And that's the main reason he loved the Hall of Fame. But there was a secondary reason. It gave him the opportunity to torment me totally out of my bloody mind over his being in and my not. It was so bad, I thought I was being waterboarded. I'm not kidding you. I'll give you some examples. A few years ago, he and I and Donnie were in the Midtown having some Pepsis and a couple of other beverages. All of a sudden, Mike leans over and says, "Donzie, I'm in the Hall of Fame twice. How many times you in?" Donnie answers with this ridiculous number, like it's insane. I mean, he shouldn't be in once, but 15 times? Give me a break. Then he leans over. "Jimbo, how many?" "Oh, never mind, sorry." A few minutes later, "Donzie," and he's whispering, but they can hear him in the Metro Center next door. "Maybe we should say HOF, that way Jimmy won't catch on, his feelings won't be hurt." A few minutes later, I get up to go to the washroom. "Oh, good, he's gone. We can talk about the HOF. I just have a couple of more examples, then I'll talk about a soccer career. A couple of years ago, we were talking on the phone, like we always did. And he said, I gotta go. I got a Hall of Fame meeting. "Jimmy, before you ask, no, your name won't be brought up." Finally, in order to perpetuate the aggro, he paid Donnie McCauley to initial his golf balls with HOF, knowing full well that we golf a lot together, and every time you're looking for a ball, I got to see this HOF. But in retaliation, as I speak, I'm having mine professionally engraved with the initials KMA. K stands for kiss, M stands for me, and A stands for a word that rhymes with farce. I'm just going to talk about his soccer because I didn't witness any of his other so-called exploits. I told you that story, by the way, in case I take the odd shot at Mike. He deserves it. And I know he's here in spirit. Soccer. I have to go back to when we were 7 and 8, snotty-nosed kids, and those were the days when our mothers threw us out, sometimes literally, and said, "Go play, don't get dirty, and be home 5 minutes after the whistle blows." One year we happened to come across remember those old soccer balls? There were those hard rubber things, and like they'd bounce forever. And if you ever got one in the face, well, you wouldn't have to wear rouge for a month. Not that we wore rouge. I was just giving you an example, you know, how red you'd be. Anyway, those games obviously worked for Mike because he made the high school team in grade 8. I don't know about now, but in those days, that was quite an accomplishment. I think he was a small forward and actually got some playing time. Did I mention that was his 3rd year in grade 8? So a couple of years later, Mike has a growth spurt, and so the coaches wisely decide he should play halfback instead of forward. And by the time we hit grade 12, he was captain of the team and center half. And as you know, center half is a position usually reserved for the best player on the team. Now, Mike, I didn't say you were the best player on the team. I said you played the position usually reserved for the best player on the team. He was a great center half. He truly was. I hate to say it because he's listening, but you know, he saw the whole field and he knew where every player was. And I could hear him hollering now, "Jimmy, get back, you're offside," or, you know, "Boogie, pass it to so-and-so, he's in the open." He was, I think he had more eyes than a potato. Anyway, he was great. From there, and it gets a little intertwined here, from there he went to teachers college or normal college. I don't know what it was called back then. He certainly didn't belong in anything normal. But he would play soccer in the fall at teachers college, and in the summers he would play senior. At teachers college, I'm doing this from memory, he was their leading scorer most years. He was there 3 years. The final 2 years, he was the MVP. And in one game against Acadia Junior Varsity, he scored 5 goals. I got to believe he was playing forward. I mean, who knows? I wasn't with him at the time. In the spring of 1969, he, and I've got their names here, he and a few other guys from town, Ron Boogie McIsaac, Bill Mucky McDonald, Davey McNeil, and yours truly, Lowell Cormier, joined a team from Sydney called the Sydney Junior Celts, and they competed for the right to represent Nova Scotia in the first Canada Games. Unfortunately, they lost 1-0 in the final to a Strong Valley team, and Mike couldn't be there because he was writing an exam and most likely would have made the difference. As a footnote, I and Gary McDonald were in Toronto at the time, or we certainly would have made the difference. That's a little plug. I gave Lowell and those guys a plug. Later that summer, some of the lads mentioned above and Mike joined the Senior Celts, and they went undefeated in the summer of 1969 and actually beaten Waterford for the Cape Breton Championship. Now, I guess it's only fitting that it took guys from New Waterford to beat a team from New Waterford. And I suspect that was the only time anybody other than Waterford ever won the Cape Breton Championship. The following year, 1970, Mike had a contract dispute with the owner of the Sydney Celts, or the sponsor. He wanted $101 for the summer because I was getting $100. The sponsor wouldn't budge, so back to New Waterford Mike came, and that's where he ended his senior career. In 1973, I believe, Art, you can correct me, is that when they won the Challenge Cup? Mike was co-captain, and at that time was playing fullback. So if you're listening to me, and why would you, he's gone from being forward to halfback to fullback. And believe me, he was as adept at playing fullback as he was the other positions. I remember clearly one game, I was still with Sydney, and I think it was Alan McCormick and I were having our way with whatever defensive back was on our side of the field. Well, Art, the SOB that he is, decided to move Mike over to our side of the field. I don't think we touched the ball the rest of the game. And it's not because Mike was faster. He just had a head for the game. It really takes a special talent to be able to play that many positions and play them well. Guys can play forward, halfback, fullback. The only reason he didn't become a keeper is that he heeded Maddie's words. Go out and play, but don't come home dirty. So to sum up, and as far as soccer goes, you all know that this town has produced dozens of very good soccer players. In my humble opinion, I believe Mike is certainly in the top 10, and from a soccer standpoint, very deserving of this prestigious award. So I'm going to hand it back to Donnie.
So on a somewhat more serious note, I get to remind you of some of Mike's efforts with regard to the organization and development of programs for the youth in the town. Prior to getting into that part, I recently came to realize that Mike's organizing ability began to be developed in grade school. Jimmy told me that as a kid, Mike was always organizing events. These included road hockey, pond hockey, and a few other games that I dare say may not exist or are not played much anymore. These were the games of Lee Hockers, Kick the Can, and Hopping Cars. I'm sure many here tonight remember playing some of those games. For the uninitiated, Hopping Cards was only played in the winter. Another game Jimmy says they organized was Spin the Bottle. And for this, girls were invited to play. Apparently, Mike was also the one who made the rules and was the one who had the authority to change them if need be to guarantee the desired outcome. Seriously, though, from an organizational standpoint, Mike had a hand in developing many basketball-related activities that still flourish today. He, along with Lowell Cormier, co-founded the New Waterford Minor Basketball Association, and he was also the lead organizer of the New Waterford Common School Basketball League, which at one point had 24 teams representing the 4 elementary schools which existed in our town at that time. This league just completed its 41st year. As part of his role in the league, he would arrange to have gym supervisors in place who would also serve as referees. Every Saturday when games were being played, Mike would travel from gym to gym, checking to ensure that things were running smoothly, supervising and offering guidance to elementary student players and the volunteer coaches. He continued to serve in this capacity for 12 years after his retirement from teaching. A remarkable aspect of Mike's leadership was that for more than 30 years, the fee for a child to play in this league was only $10. Mike wanted to ensure that basketball would be an affordable sport for the youth of the community. Another special thing that he did with this league was to make sure that all game results were posted in the local community press, and the names of all players who scored a point had their names in the paper. He also played a pivotal role in organizing the Mini Coal Bowl, which completed its 33rd year in 2018. And this tournament, along with the Jim Fox Chesson Elementary Tournament for girls, have provided competitive grade school basketball for budding players from across Cape Breton. Mike coordinated all activities associated with both these tournaments, making schedules, arranging for referees and minor officials, and running the skills contests that were part of each tourney. Mike also had considerable success as a coach at Breton Education Center, especially at the junior high level, where he had a significant role in development of some very strong teams. He also spent some time as an assistant coach with Lowell Cormier for the Beck Senior Boys basketball team. In my research, I didn't find anything that proved this was a successful partnership. Back to you, Woody.
You're a sick man, Mr. McCauley. Mike was also instrumental in volunteering with and organizing and running of the annual Knights of Columbus track and field event for elementary school children in the area. In addition to all his organizing, coordinating, and coaching, Mike found time to play some other sports other than soccer, as you know. He was a member of the New Waterford Hi-Fi Hawks fastball team, who won back-to-back Nova Scotia intermediate titles in '76 and '77. He also played with the New Waterford Strands, winners of the '73 Maritime Intermediate Basketball Championship. Mike also spent quite a number of seasons playing slow pitch with the French club, and this rather motley crew was quite successful, winning quite a few tournaments throughout the Cape Breton area during their heyday. Now, it may be safe to say that Mike, with his involvement in so many activities, interfered with his ability to develop other skills, such as cooking. So whenever Roseanne was away, there was a well-worn path from his house to his sister Celia's. And he and I both had running jokes with our wives. You can't be an athlete and a handyman too. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen it, but he does have a toolbox, and it is literally a tool box. One tool, it's a hammer, and it's new, and it's for sale. I don't know what's next, Donnie, but I'd like to mention that Roseanne raised 4 kids. Kellyanne, Julie, Scott, and Mike. And she did it for over 40 years. They also have 4 lovely grandchildren, and I don't know whose move it is to call them up here, but I'd certainly give it. Not yet. Oh, you got. See, it's just like at the tavern. He's cutting me off.
Before the plaque presentation, I feel it only fitting to make reference to Mike's golfing ability, or lack thereof. As a number of you may know, Mike and Jimmy, representing St. Agnes School, and my brother Dave, who's down there, and I, representing Central School, engaged in a number of golf matches once or twice a year during the 10-year span. To my recollection, the Protestant school, that'd be my side, Duncan, had about a 13-3 margin of victory. And it was not because we were that good. But the matches, whether held in Cape Breton or Halifax, always began with all the decorum and gentlemanliness associated with golf. It began with handshake, hugs, and wishes for a good match, good game. More often than not, as the matches progressed and the Centralites began to open up a lead, there would slowly begin a marked change in the demeanor of the Snagnessers. It seemed to begin quietly, first with requests from assistance from saints and departed priests. Once in a while, the prayer beads would come out. And they were suitably done in the red and white colors of St. Agnes. But when it became obvious that these incantations and pleas were not being answered in a timely manner, and the Protestant leads were widening, all semblance of golf decorum quickly disappeared, to be replaced by profanity-laced tirades, very harmful insults, along with threats of bodily harm. All of the above did nothing to affect the play of my brother Dave and I. Once in a while we were distracted because we'd take a break to laugh. For you see, all the comments from Mike and Jimmy were directed at each other. But in the end, though, when the matches were over, everything was fine. The camaraderie was evident. The beer tasted good, especially for the Protestant squad, who continued to be strong believers in that free beer always tastes better. But I, for one, sorely miss those games and the time spent in Mike's company. I would dearly love him to give him one more hug and thank him again for the beer.
Julie, Roseanne, could you come up and get the plaque? And if it's too heavy, I'll take care of it for you. I'll put it in a really good place.
Guys, have the plaque there, okay? So get a picture with him now, okay?
I just want to tell everybody that I am also a retired school teacher and enjoy a captive audience. However, just going to say thank you very much. And Mike loved and worked with and enjoyed so many of the people in this room, respected and admired them. And I know he would be honored to be inducted tonight. Thank you very much.